Hello, Devlin here with you, and welcome to another edition of my pirate radio show. And thank you for joining me today. I took a couple of weeks off, which I don't normally do. This is just something I started. I believe I took a week off at Christmas, maybe even 2 weeks, and I decided to do it again at Easter. I had done the show steady for so long that I decided that every once in a while I might just take breaks just to recharge my batteries or just, get my head from being fluffy and stuff like that. I think if I had, hundreds of thousands of people listening in every week, I'd probably only take 1 week off. But because I don't get a big thing and I'm only probably in double digits, and I'm being kind saying that. Now, that being said, I don't want you to think that if you're one of my regular listeners that I don't appreciate you coming in, but hey, I think you could even use a break from me every once in a while. And the good news is I've got so many past episodes, you can always relive one of your favorites. If you're really going through Devlin withdrawals. And if you are, thank you for that, because it's just a compliment, and I appreciate it. I got a great show, I think, coming back. I'm going to go out of my comfort zone a little bit later. I won't talk about that, but something I've promised a long, long time ago is going to happen on this episode, and it's going to be fun, because it's something I haven't relived in a long time, and I might regret reliving it again, but we won't talk about that. It's also the end of the month, so I'll be taking a look at the movies I saw in April. I saw 3 of them. So I will take a look at Power Rangers, I will take a look at Ghost in the Shell, and The Fate of the Furious. And, we'll be talking about them in our middle section. But right now I want to talk about coming of age. It's spring, the flowers are blooming, we're getting weird weather as we do up here in Canada all the time, hard rains, sunny days followed by cold days. It's just a fact of life that's the way spring has become. There was a time May used to be an incredible month, but I actually think May now can be a hit and miss month. And September is more of a summer month just because of the way I don't know if it's what you want to call global warming or just the way it seems like the weather is changing, the patterns and stuff. Coming of age is, we all go through it. We all hit that thing. The reason I decided to talk about this is I heard somebody talk about how coming of age movies used to be like a thing. They used to be like, even coming-of-age novels. Examples of coming-of-age movies would be like Breakfast Club or Stand By Me or, if you want to go back, even The Graduate or, some even movies like a Top Gun or something like that could be considered a coming-of-age story. They can be like sweet little dramas. They can be comedies. I guess you could even call movies like, Meatballs or Porky's coming-of-age films too. Now, our theaters are just jam-packed with blockbusters week after week. If you actually go back and look at the 60s and the 70s, there weren't many movies coming out, so a lot of people say, well, you didn't have a lot of variety, so that's why people went to movies so often and that. And I agree with that. That's, a solid point. But the truth of the matter is that every week now, we have like a gigantic blockbuster. We might get a couple of indie films, and most of them don't even make it to the theaters anymore unless you're lucky to live in a town that shows the odd smaller films. But for most, you might find them accidentally streaming on a streaming site, or you might find them, at a DVD place or something and say, oh, this looks interesting. But there was a time we actually searched out coming-of-age films because they were important to us. Anyhow, the reason I wanted to talk about this is somebody said that the reason coming-of-age movies don't do well is because of the fact that people don't really necessarily come of age anymore. And I loved that saying because the more I thought about it, it's true. if you look at what your parents were like in their 30s and look at what 30-year-olds are like now, it's very different. There are some similarities, they're paying bills, they're living their life. But if you remember your parents, and if you're from my age group, I'm thinking, your parents were very serious, They may have had some hobbies or stuff like that, but they were very serious. They paid the bills. They went, to work. They did and, they might have the odd hobby here and there, but the hobby was literally that, a hobby. Now you see people, and a lot of them, their hobbies are a big part of their lives. You can see people who go to work and they go to cosplay, or they still collect toys from upcoming movies and stuff like that. They, role play. They, play Dungeons and Dragons or any other kind of role playing. And it's more, the social thing is more than what our parents had, and even what, my generation. I'm kind of in between, because I did keep a lot of my childhood. But honestly, that was my choice to not grow up too much, like to grow up just enough. But when I meet people that I went to high school with, or people from my generation, I meet the odd one that are similar to me, but the majority of them, I'm like, oh my God, they're my parents now. They're their parents, that I remember, meeting when I was growing up with these kids. And I always, it's a funny thing, I think I've told you this before, sometimes Mike and I will tell stories. And we'll say, okay, there was this lady on the elevator, this older lady. And then after we think about it, we're like, wait a minute, no, she's probably my age. And the reason why is Mike and I are very young at heart. So sometimes some people just look older than they are, and it's because they got the weight of the world on their shoulders. Now, younger people, like millenniums, they keep their childhood. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm saying that they may still pay bills. I can hear younger people in their 20s and talking about, having to pay phone bills or having to pay insurance, for their car and stuff like that. Like trying desperately to make it work living in an apartment. But at the same time, I'll hear them talk about, I was up all night, trying this new video game, eating chips, and talking like I kind of did back in my high school days, or something similar at least. But I now realize that, we've got generations that are growing up. And as I said, I'm kind of in between, because my parents did have hobbies and stuff. I remember my dad going fishing, but, to me, that's a grown-up kind of hobby. Kids can do it too, but, let's go fishing. And I remember my mom, she liked going to the bingo, and, and together they would like have friends over and play cards. There was a lot of alcohol involved. And I never thought much of it when I was a kid, but I miss those days when my parents used to have friends over and play cards, because when I look at it now, I realize that's them being social with people. But I remember there were lots of times when they didn't have friends to play cards with, and it was very difficult. They'd play cards once in a while by themselves, but not often. But they would regularly have nights where even my older brothers would come over and play cards. I kind of missed that card phase that they went through. And so that was their kind of thing. And I also remember, like, when I talk about, kids now, like they, equally plan for, like, okay, we got to save money if we want to go to on a trip. And they equally plan it like, oh, we got to save money if we want to get some costumes properly made for Comic-Con this year. So we kind of live in that weird kind of, like, we've got adults running around still being fanboys of stuff that they love. And again, I'm not putting this down, but it saddens me when it comes to coming-of-age movies. Because there's been a couple of great ones, and I always wonder, why did this movie fail? I'm thinking the two last year is Sing Street, which I've praised many times. It was in my year-end countdown. And Edge of 17. And these are both coming-of-age movies that were... people really loved them when I see them, but they didn't get seen by many people because people would rather go see a big blockbuster or... like a bigger critically acclaimed movie, like, oh, that was up for like 4 Oscars. I better go see that. And sadly, these little coming-of-age movies are kind of disappearing. Or, if you're a reader, coming-of-age movies can easily be something like, The Hunger Games or Twilight. They're kind of, their versions of it. But, unless they have a blockbuster feel to it, we're kind of losing out on that aspect. Now, I remember, thinking about my parents and thinking, yeah, it was kind of sad there, even though they had their little social things. But I remember that there was times where my mother may have, and I think a big part of it is that we baby a lot of the kids we have now. I see parents, just doing everything for their kid to the point where they actually have adults. I've seen people, not kids, in their 30s that really don't know how to adult. If they have any problems, they still go to their parents, which there's nothing wrong with that. But there is a point where you think that, okay, these people should have known how to do this by now, or they should know how to take care of their own kids and not have to rely on grandparents all the time. If you're responsible enough to make kids, you should be able to parent. But anyhow, I see that, my parents had to grow up fast. My dad, was he went into the military at 16, so he did have a childhood, and, it was one of those nostalgic coming of age things probably where he, grew up playing outside and in the fields and stuff like that and, making friends. But then at 16, his whole high school year would have been cut off to go into the military and fighting wars at such a young age. And my mother, she had a lot of problems at home, and actually, I've talked about it before, she escaped East Germany and climbed the fence, risked her life at about the age of 14. And she had a lot of issues at home. She never talked about them. I think there was some abuse involved, but I'm not going to speculate based on that. But these people had to grow up young. They lost their years. I know people who didn't have teen years because they had to take care of their parents. And by no means am I saying there are young people out there who couldn't do that. Absolutely. I've met some incredible young people who could step up to the plate. But I'm saying that there seems to be more and more that can't do this and can't even fathom it or work it out in their mind. And I've seen people even in their 30s, and I've met older people, trust me, that are very incompetent on stuff like that too. So in no ways am I am just saying that, yeah, there's a coming of age loss of innocence. People have to give up their childhood to take care of a sick parent. And I see this affects them later on because, one, it's a time when you're supposed to make friends, and you can't. And when you get older, I've talked about it before, it's harder to make friends. If you don't know how, you don't know where to go, and it's a very sad and lonely thing. And I've talked to people who are very lonely because they do not know how to go out and have friends. They rely on friends that they met years ago. I remember my mother may have gone through a little thing because I remember my mother collected dolls. Dolls of the world, and, not that she traveled, but she liked going, and there was a time that vintage collectors' dolls, here's one from Holland and stuff, you could buy them in department stores and stuff. And she'd collect these, and, they weren't valuable or anything, she wasn't doing it, but I think she did it because of the fact that they were dolls, they were pretty to her, and because she lost that youth. And I remember even when Cabbage Patch dolls came out, she desperately wanted one. My sister-in-law risked her life to get the Cabbage Patch doll for her, and she loved that thing. She put that on display. She always made sure it was dusted and looked good. And, and that's all a part of maybe not getting that chance as a kid to enjoy it as much as you were because they had chores and stuff like that. I read something recently that not only are some of the millennials babied, and I'm not pointing fingers and saying every millennial, because I'm not like that. I know that people are different and people are things, but I do work with a lot of millennials. In retail, I work with a lot of young people. So I do get to see a lot. I also, through improv, I meet, people. And they say that a lot of millennials can make friends, but cannot make lasting relationships. It's almost like, okay, I've made a friend. Can I Facebook you on Facebook? We'll chat a few times. Then if the friendship doesn't work, it doesn't matter because I'll just meet another one. And the one thing I can say about my parents is that they made lasting friendships. I have friendships that still go back to my high school years. I have a friendship that goes back earlier than that. And it makes me sad to think that a lot of millennials cannot connect like that because we haven't given them the social skills to do it. They have friends that they go out drinking with and stuff like that, but how quickly they'll stab each other in the back is just a really sad thing. If you're looking for something to binge watch and you're getting sick of TV shows, I suggest you do research and find some coming-of-age movies. Sing Street and Edge of 17 are more recent ones that I highly recommend. But as I said, there's a ton out there, and they form lots of things. They can be humorous, they can be serious, they can be dramatic, they can even be action. But I say look for them because coming of age is an important thing. And I'm afraid that we're losing that because we're not really coming of age. We can keep our youths now. I've talked about this before, I'm pretty sure, and if not, I've talked to somebody about it before. Another big problem we have is that we are not letting our kids rebel enough. Yes, I think I did a whole segment on this. Back in my day, when you rebelled, you wore clothes that drove your parents crazy. You got an earring. You got a tattoo. A lot of kids are now being allowed to get that. They're being told this is their social freedom. And the problem with that is that rebelling is a big part of coming of age. And when we are like, okay, now you're 3, but we'll get you an earring. That's fine. We'll get you earrings, it's fine to do that. And I understand what you're trying to do, but your kids need that rebelling. When they're saying no to you all the time and being disrespectful, they need to do that sometimes because that's their way. And yes, you sometimes have to act like a parent. You can't always be the best friend, I always like some parents say, well, I don't mind my son or daughter drinking in front of me underage, as long as they're doing it at home. And I have no problems with that. But when they start, doing it regularly or when you're not home or thing, and you wonder why, it's because sometimes you got to play the parent. The kids don't get to rebel any much. Rebelling isn't going to your room and, oh, I'm going to blow up some, zombies in a video game. That's getting stress release off, but it's not rebelling. Kids need to rebel, and I think we're taking that away from them. We're taking away coming of age from them. And don't get me wrong, I think it's wonderful that we now live in an age where we have older people that do have these fun things that they can do, and it's not just paying bills. I meet a lot of people that I wish had more fun things in their lives because they just look like we're the same age, and you look like you're like 70 years old because you've got the weight of the world on your shoulder. So coming of age is so important. And so, if you're looking for something to do on a rainy spring day, instead of binge watching a show, why don't you look up Wikipedia and check out coming of age movies? And I'm sure you'll find something you'll like. And especially if you're young, give them a try. Because sometimes you're, hey, Spider-Man, don't get me wrong. We got another Spider-Man origin movie coming up, and that is definitely going to be a coming-of-age movie. I can guarantee it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But try different ones. Comedies. Horrors, yes. There's got to be horror coming of age if you survive something like that. Drama. It's good to do that because if you're not coming to age in real life, you might as well see how the movies do it. Because that's how we used to learn, you know. We used to deal with things because we'd watch movies and read novels and, watch TV programs and say, hey, yeah, that's coming of age, and I went through something similar to that. We can't lose that. We cannot lose that. Anyhow, speaking of going to the movies, I went to the movies 3 times, so grab your popcorn. I'm going to review all 3 of those movies when I get back. Welcome back. It's that time of the month where I take a look at some of the movies I saw in April. And I saw 3 really awesome movies in April, I'm happy to say. As some of you may remember, I didn't do too well in March. In March, I had a whole bunch of movies I was looking forward to. The first movie was a movie that came out in March, and it was probably the best of all the March movies for me. And it's a little movie called Power Rangers. I was a big fan of the show Power Rangers. I watched several seasons of it in its original run. And talking about, not coming of age, because I would have been in my 20s when I was watching it. But I still was entertained by it, even though it was very cheesy and low budget. And honestly, when they announced a Power Rangers movie, I remembered the 2 they released previously, and I thought, oh, this is going to be horrible. Now, they claimed they were going to kind of reboot it and make it a little bit more adult and make it a little bit more realistic, but I don't know. I still was kind of worried about it, but I was very happy with this movie. First of all, they cast it with fairly unknowns, except they did cast Bryan Cranston as Zordon and Elizabeth Banks as Rita Repulsa. So they did have 2 big names in there, but all the kids were fairly newcomers. They've done a couple things, and that's about it. I didn't know what to expect coming in, and I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was such a well-done movie. And the biggest surprise to me is how they took their time and actually developed the characters. Even characters that were on for years on the show never got a lot of development because it was a kid's show. They never really worked on it. And they basically were reduced to just like, he's the jock, and he's the brain, and she's the athletic one, and it was just kind of cheesy in every way, and automatically they start developing these characters, and you can tell they really care about these characters. What I also like is that they also have a lot of respect for the show. I can tell whoever directed this definitely knew what they were doing as far as being a fan of the movie. Dean Israelite was the name of the director, and you could tell he was a fan, but a real fan also would probably want to develop the story, and that's exactly what he did. So he probably worked with them and made them. Incredible young cast. They went back and recast the original Rangers. Dacre Montgomery played Jason. Naomi Scott played Kimberly Hart. R.J. Seiler was Billy. And Becky G played Trini, and Ludi Lin played Zach. And I have to say, these 5 characters were all incredible. They all have moments to shine, although some got to shine more. I'm a huge Jason fan, and when they cast Dacre Montgomery, I was a little worried, because although the original Jason Austin St. James was a good-looking guy, this guy was a little bit of a pretty boy, but honestly, I can see why they cast him. He is very pretty to look at, but he also has the chops. I thought he won me over instantly as Jason, protecting Billy from bullies and stuff, and it was actually quite nice to see. Another standout is R.J. Seiler, who played the character Billy. They took some real liberties, and now, yeah, there's some minor spoilers coming here, but I'm not going to spoil any of the movie, but things that you might not want to know if you haven't seen it. Billy is actually played as somebody with Asperger's or autism, and when you're watching it, they never really call it out, but you can start seeing little things. And it's actually a wonderful choice. At first, I was a little nervous by it, but it really works well. Kimberly is, doesn't get a lot to do in this movie, but she does shine in this movie, and I'd like to see she'll grow as a character. They do, develop something with her, but they don't really see a lot in it. Trini is, a girl who's a little edgier, but also is dealing with some sexual orientation issues, which you would never see in the Japanese version, or maybe the Japanese version, but not the Americanized version that we get. And Zach was actually really cool, and you really get to meet him a lot. And he is a young boy who is rebelling against the world because it's treated him horrible, and he takes care of his sickly mother. Right there, just those descriptions tell me that they're different than what we had in the movie and in the TV series. And they continually develop them. And the thing I like is there's a couple of little action sequences here and there, but they leave the bulk of the action at the end, which I think probably pissed off a lot of people because they want to see action, action, action. But they literally take the time to develop characters, and we actually care about them near the end. I actually was a little disappointed when we got to the action sequence, because I was so falling in love with the little action sequences where they were training and learning their powers and getting to know one another. There's a beautiful scene around a campfire where they just open up to one another, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful scene. Alpha 5 is a character that's always irritated me, but I understand that people want to see them. Bill Hader does the voice. Alpha 5 didn't irritate me, but I still was freaked out by him a little bit, so that's something. I was very surprised they didn't try to even squeak Bulk and Skull in here. There's a couple of bullies in the movies, but in no ways do they say that they're actually Bulk and Skull. But they could have totally done it without giving them that horrible, goofy side where stuff like that. Anyhow, very pleasantly surprised about Power Rangers. Very happily surprised. I thought it was a solid movie. Definitely one that kids were enjoying. I would say older kids. I had a really young kid sitting behind me, and he could not sit still through this movie, and it was just way too young for him. And there's some even moments where they try to shock you a little bit, and they're kind of a little bit scary for younger people. A lot of people complain about Elizabeth Banks being a little bit too over the top. I actually thought she was great. She enjoyed it. You can't go over the top. If for any of you know who the real Rita Repulsa was, that woman went so over the top. There is no way anybody could have topped it. So I thought actually Elizabeth Banks was downplaying the role, if anything. Anyhow, Power Rangers, great movie. I know many people who saw it that weren't fans of the show that actually surprisingly liked it. The box office didn't do great, but it did okay, so we're fingers crossed. There is a mid-season scene, a mid-credit scene that kind of hints to where they're going in typical Power Rangers fashion. They're going to continue following the story, and I cross my fingers that they will do it, because it looks like we need a sequel for this. I really want to see these characters again, so cross my fingers. Even better, go out and buy the DVD when it comes out, the Blu-ray, go out and see it if it's still playing in theaters. Let's get the money up so we can see Part 2. I know they want to do 6 sequels, but I just want to get to number 2. Let's take it one movie at a time. Speaking of taking it one movie at a time, we go to another movie that opened in late March, and I happened to go see it. A friend of mine talked me into go seeing it. It wasn't on my highly needed to see it movie, and surprise, surprise, I liked it. I actually probably liked it better than the 3 movies I saw in March: Kong Island, Beauty and the Beast, and even Logan a little bit. And everybody else seemed to hate it, but I liked it. It was Ghost in the Shell with Scarlett Johansson, based on a classic anime. I really liked it. I'm not familiar with the source material. I didn't see the anime. I didn't read the comics. And I know people are probably thinking, well, you would have thought different of the movie if you knew the source material better, and possible, I'll give you that. But keep in mind, I was also blessed with the ability to know that You go into a movie and know that this is a clean slate. Yes, you might know the beats. When I saw Power Rangers, I knew all the beats I would see, but the movie was refreshing, so I knew it was a clean take. And if I went into this movie like, that guy doesn't look like the Red Ranger, that's not Jason, that's not Kimberly, if I went into that, I would have hated it. But I know to clear my head and go see something, so even if I knew the source material, I would have looked at it as its own identity. I hate when people say, oh, it was nothing like the book, or it's nothing like the TV series it used to be based on. I don't care, because it's a new take on it, and sometimes things that work in books or comics don't work on the big screen, and vice versa. Anyhow, enough with that. Ghost in the Machine, I thought, was an actual surprising movie. I thought, first of all, we went to see it in 3D because it was the only showing we could get to, and I'm so glad we saw it in 3D. This movie is so beautiful. I wanted to get lost in this world, even though I knew this world was a little cruddy at times. It just was such a phenomenal looking world, with just holographic images all through the buildings, and just their play on science, because it's basically, I'm going to murder this, but it's basically about a woman who becomes like an android cyborg, and she, kind of like the Bourne Identity, she starts realizing there's something more. She's getting glitches in her system that are actually memories trying to come out of her past, and she's got scientists that she meets with, and she goes on these missions. And I found that the action was very minimal, but they splice it up enough to keep it going. I really liked the journey of this. I thought this could have easily been a ripoff of Jason Bourne, but I actually thought this was actually even better than the last Jason Bourne movie we had. And visually stunning. It was incredible. Now, I really like Scarlett Johansson, and this is going to sound horrible, but I've always found Scarlett Johansson. Now, first of all, I only know her from action films. I know her from The Avengers. I know her from Lucy. I've never seen her dramatic pieces. So keep that in mind when I say this and you're ready to oh, how dare you? I've always found Scarlett Johansson's acting to be a little limited. I've seen other women who do action like Linda Hamilton and Sigourney Weaver or Kate Beckinsale, and I've always thought they actually bring the actress as well, but I've always found, even with Black Widow and stuff, she is a good actress, but she seems limited to me. And I actually thought that worked really great, where she's playing kind of a robot. And I think I really enjoyed it better because of that. One of my favorite scenes in this movie is when she's starting to question her body, because she's now in a totally robotic body. So she's got perfect skin, perfect face. And again, Scarlett Johansson's so gorgeous that she fits in this really well. To fall under that, because it's nothing worse than when you see a movie and she's totally good looking and you don't see it, but she fits that. But my favorite scene is she goes off with a prostitute, and they just spend time with this other, looking at her face and seeing the freckles and the imperfections on her face, because she has none of that, because she is, a robot. She was made to look perfect, and it's such a sexy and sweet scene. There's nothing sexual about this scene, but somehow there is some erotica with just looking at face. And I think the reason why is, as I get older, I think I've talked about how I actually kind of want to touch people's faces as I get older, because I love looking for their imperfections. I love looking for little things that might drive them crazy, but I love to see how attractive it makes them, and I love that scene. I can totally relate to that scene, and I love that she continues finding it, and the world just gets crazier and crazier, but I fell in love with this world instantly, and I thought Ghost in the Machine was a very entertaining movie. It was great to look at. I look forward to seeing it again. I think that it is just, if you go into it with a little open mind, I think you might find some enjoyment. I get it if the source material. I've only seen a handful of anime, and I don't know. I think maybe this is maybe too normal for anime, maybe this adaptation, because I've found some weird stuff happening in anime. So for me, maybe it's thing. I'm not even going to get into the whitewashing of it all. I'm an old school person who remembers when acting was acting. I will say this about the whitewashing is that they do explain it. They explain it why, the robot is a white person and stuff like that. And what I remember seeing a thing that basically they showed images of Scarlett Johansson as a Major, and they showed it to people in Japan. And everybody in Japan was familiar with the Ghost in the Shell, and people in Japan, majority, thought it was perfect casting. They thought she looked great. They had no problems with it. Who has the problems with it? White people. We actually complain about it because it's like, oh, this should be an Asian character. But they showed it to Asian people, and Asian thought Scarlett Johansson was beautifully cast in the role, and she looked amazing. Kind of tells you something, in my humble opinion. It kind of tells you something. Just like those people who are like complaining about Iron Fist, about how he is not an Asian, and he's not an Asian in the source material either, so maybe you should start doing your homework. Let's acting be acting. Ghost in the Shell, nice, pleasant surprise. As I said, I really liked it. Check it out. Finally, my last movie is a little something called The Fate of the Furious. I tell you, I remember seeing the first Fast and the Furious. It's still my favorite movie because all the other movies have become overblown, cartoonish, but don't get me wrong, entertaining is all hell. But the first movie's still a sweet movie about car racing and family. Now it's about cars, explosions, and still a little bit about family. Because if you don't have a scene where Dom's not talking about family, it ain't the Fast and the Furious. The one thing I've always loved about the Fast and the Furious franchise is that they know their audience. They do not apologize for their audience. They give the audience exactly what they want. Every director must get a checklist. It should have one racing sequence. It should have one scene of girls in short shorts shaking their ass to hip-hop music or rap. Then you got your, have to have at least one plot twist to make it seem like we took some time writing the story. Lots of quips and at least one story where there's a dinner and Vin Diesel's character can sit up and talk about family and the importance of it. And I never get sick of it. That's the thing. Anyhow, all the checks have been marked on here. Also, elaborate action sequences are in there, explosions, and rivals coming together, working together. I know that's a bit of a spoiler, but it's in all the commercials, so probably not. Having The Rock and Jason Statham is definitely a lot of fun. Their screen time is phenomenal, and that's one of the things that make this movie so amazing, is their chemistry. Even if you go back to the movies and remember all the horrible things Jason Statham did to people, but yet there he is laughing and joking and hanging out with the new guys and stuff. But the thing that makes the Fast and the Furious movies good is that they are just bug nuts crazy. They are cartoons, and if they're entertaining, that's all you really want. And I thought Fate of the Furious is very entertaining. I thought it was very fun. Their villain in this is Charlize Theron, and she is really good. She does it over the top, but still manages to keep it an elegance about it. She knows she's in a Fast and the Furious movie, and she's not afraid of it. Helen Mirren does a great guest appearance in this. Who would have thought you'd hear the name Helen Mirren in the Fast and the Furious franchise? This is what makes this series so awesome. Everybody's in it, and they're going to come back one way or another. Somebody dies or gets killed or gets... it doesn't matter if you killed 4,000 people. You will come back in some way, and you probably will be a good guy again. That's why the Fast and the Furious is fun, and this movie is fun. There's some sequences with Jason Statham and a very young member of the crew, and I think is absolutely some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen. And the big action sequence this time involves submarines and snow vehicles, and it is just crazy and over the top. Everything about this movie is over the top, and that's what people want to see. I don't want to see Shakespearean acting. I want to see fun people having a good time. The movie does fall apart a little bit when Vin Diesel is separated from a lot of the people in this movie, and since he's a big heart of this thing, you do feel it a little bit, but there's so much fun being had by everybody else, it's not a problem. I really thought Paul Walker's, he was my favorite part. There's a lot of hunky guys in Fast and the Furious, but Paul Walker was the one I really enjoyed watching, and I was afraid, and I didn't want to sound shallow, but I was afraid there would be just no, eye candy for me, although I am a big Jason Statham fan, and Vin Diesel and The Rock can do it for me certain times. But they add Scott Eastwood to this, and he's a real green military, not military, like FBI kind of CIA kind of guy, and he gets involved in it. And he's the guy who shows them the cars. Another thing off the checklist of Fast and the Furious. You always have to have that scene where they unveil vehicles that make all the guys drool and want to drive them. And Scott Eastwood gets to do that. And they break his balls all the way through this. And he fits in really well. They didn't try to copy Brian, but they give us another young guy who could easily join the group whenever needed. And I think he was definitely needed to have someone like that in there. Michelle Rodriguez is back. What more can I say? Kurt Russell makes a reappearance from, I think he was in the last movie or maybe the one before that. I always want to go into these movies not wanting to like them anymore and just say I wash my hands of them, but The Fate of the Furious knows its audience and gives us everything we ever want. It's almost getting hard to tell them apart, though, but you still can put them on at any point in the movie and still walk away with a good time. There is no difference with this. You are going to have a good time if you're a fan of the other movies. If I have to do rating scales for this, Power Rangers would come in at 8 out of 10. I think Ghost in the Shell would be a solid 7 out of 10. And Fate of the Furious, which is still playing in theaters, would get 7.5. I tempted to bring it up to 8, but no, there was enough flaws and craziness that we have to put it down to a 7.5, but still a really good mark for it. Next week, we have a special episode coming up. It's our summer movie review show. We have done this 3 years in a row, or at least 2 years, and then we're going to do it next week 3. So if you're a movie fan, tune in. I'm going to take a look at the movies that will take us through May, June, July, and August, and see which ones I'm looking forward to, which ones I'm not so looking forward to. And that is next week. So if you liked listening to these reviews, then join us next week and start planning the movies you're going to see this summer. Because believe it or not, we're almost there. We are almost there. And the blockbuster movies will be ablazing. I'll also tell you about some of the smaller movies that you might want to sneak out to and check out. Taking a short break, I have threatened it many times, but I'm cranking out the poetry book and sharing with you some of my original poetry. God help us, I don't know if this is going to go well. That's coming up after this short break. Hello, welcome back, and we're here for the final segment. And a long time ago, I told you that I actually wrote poetry. A lot of it was done in my late teens and mostly through my 20s. And I didn't have a very successful poetry career, but I remember at the time I really loved the stuff I was doing. I never even really wanted to call it poetry, to be honest with you. I don't know exactly what I wanted to call it. They were kind of just like musings and stuff. I didn't follow regular rhyme schemes or anything. I just kind of put it all together. A lot of it is dark. Some of it is light. I can't believe I'm actually going to share some of this. Now, the only thing that ever came of my poetry career is the name Devlin Bishop. When I used to write on, we used to do a website, me and my friends, I used to go by the name Devlin Blackheart. I've been using the name Devlin for a long, long time. Even when I was a kid, I used to use it. Yeah, Devlin Blackheart. But when I started getting away from the dark poetry and stuff, I went to Devlin Bishop and used my real surname. And I even remember the day I told my parents, I said, I don't want you to think I hate my name Donald, because I don't. That's not the case at all. It's just when I go to these poetry readings, I want to have something a little fancier. So that's kind of how Devlin Bishop was born. And yes, you heard me right. I actually read some of this out loud. I went to a couple poetry readings to share my stuff. I didn't really get into the poetic scene. I really never felt my stuff was, I don't know. I don't want to say I don't think it's that good, because I have not looked at some of this stuff probably in over 10 years. And tonight I'm going to share some of it with you. Now, I didn't actually sit and pick out the best ones. I actually thought it'd be more fun to just randomly go and read them with the title. And so I'm going to read some of this, not knowing what I'm sharing with you. But the first thing I am going to share with you is I actually was concocting a book of poetry. I had two kind of on the works. One was called Mondo Dementia. Yeah, I know, I'm obsessed with the word Mondo. The other one was called Trash and Torch, and a beautiful picture of me with red lipstick on. Oh, I love this picture. I wish I could share it to you. I guess I could, maybe, but I don't know. We'll see. Anyhow, this is something I wrote. I dedicated the book to anyone who's ever had a heart at one time or another. I love this. But keep in mind, I wrote this at the darkest times in my life. So even when you hear some light ones in here, keep in mind where my head was at. And I'm not going to... I have a ton of them, but I'm not going to read them all. So I'm literally going to just go by the titles and thing. But before we get to that, I have to read my dedication. This blew me away. Now, I haven't read this in ages, but this was actually the foreword in my book when I attempted to write a book. So I'm going to read this to you, and then we'll get right to the poetry. I know I'm stalling a little bit because I can't believe I'm actually going to do this. So here's the foreword I wrote in a book, and I just read it like minutes ago. I don't know if I should share this, but I find it fascinating to go back and look at stuff that you wrote. My real name is Donald Bishop. This book is written under the name Devlin Blackheart, a name I gave myself when I was young, to describe the dark shadow beast that was deep inside me. Don speak his own mind. On the other hand, Devlin Blackheart can be crude, rude, and totally honest with his emotions. I'm not schizophrenic. I know the difference between Don and Devlin. He is not a mental disorder. He is a friend. And if not for him, I would never have survived the many rapes of my youth. As I see the world around me starting to burn and the people starting to go crazy, I feel now is the time to let Devlin speak. The thing I find most phenomenal about this is written at a time when I was contemplating suicide. I didn't want to live anymore. And reading this again, and some of it I still think is kind of hokey and, like angsty. But some of it, like watching the world burn and starting to see people go crazy, that's where I am now. So this is mind-blowing. I hope this turns out to be a positive thing because of the fact that I hope it doesn't depress me going in here. So let's go and look for some things. Okay, as I said, I'm randomly going. I love this title. I've always liked this title. Here's the first poem. I can't believe I'm recording this stuff. Oh my God. Please be brutal and gentle also when you if you write any comments about my poetry. This is called Wicked Sexy Heaven. Again, haven't read this in years, so I'm going to just read it without like going over it. Okay, Wicked Sexy Heaven. When they made you, they must have broken the mold. Sometimes you're so tender, and sometimes you're so damn cold. I remember the night when you told me to go away, and minutes later you were crying and begging me to stay. Everyone I know says that I'm a fool, and if I think about it, I know they're right. Well, maybe tomorrow I will leave, but I know where I want to be tonight. 'Cause when we make love, you take me to places I've never been, and just one kiss sets me free. You're wicked, you're sexy, you're heaven. Baby, you are all these things to me. Now, there might be stories behind some of these, but I'm not going to elaborate unless I feel the need to. Oh my god, some of these titles I don't even recognize, so I'm only going to go for the ones I do because I don't want to really embarrass myself. Oh my god. Oh, attempt at writing songs. Oh, this is called Torch and Trash. I have no clue what we're getting ourselves into here. She's a lounge singer with a pretty voice. She hates her job, but she doesn't have a choice. She has 3 small children, each with a different dad. She wears her makeup thick to hide that she is sad. And as she sings the torch song, she tries hard not to cry. A trailer park is where she calls home, and if you don't count her sons, she'd be all alone. Closets filled with beautiful gowns bought from second-hand stores. Lots of sequins and satin once owned by first-class whores. As she knows they all look at her like trash, she tries hard not to cry. Every night she gets lost in the songs she sings. It's the one time she can dream that she was meant for better things. Then she opens her eyes and sees her world is made of cheap cigars and Bacardi rum. When the show is done, the spotlight dies. That's when her tears come. Yeah, I liked some of that. Some of it was a little thing. Okay, I like the title of this, so we're going for it. My Only Crime, Wondering in brackets. I wait for you in the pouring rain, wondering where you are or if I'll ever see you again. I tried to be your hero, tried to save your soul. It's never easy watching a friend lose control. My only crime is letting you into my heart, giving you everything and watching you tear everything apart. I know it's not you, it's the chemicals in your veins. I'm the only one who sees the angel trapped in your human remains. The storm rages on, but I continue to wait. It's going on midnight, you said you'd be here by 8. The tears that I cry are hidden by the rain. I wonder where you are or if I'll ever see you again. I'm not sure if I love it or hate it, but I didn't hate it. Virgin vinyl. He drops the needle on the virgin vinyl, and suddenly the crowd is in a trance. With every double beat, they seem to fill the floor. He has seduced them and forced them all to dance. He has the power. He controls the night. His music cuts through all time and space. I can't believe the way he puts the pulse in my heart. I've fallen for the DJ, and I haven't even seen his face. I like that one. I wrote that for a friend of mine, Reese. I had seen his face, though. All right, I can't believe. Unoriginal Sins. This sounds like a good one. There's nothing left to talk about. There's nothing left to say. You know you can trust me because I planned it that way. I want to be your lover. It's not enough just to be your friend. You say you don't want to lose me. I say it would be the perfect end. It's a hot summer night, the perfect time to indulge in some unoriginal sins. There's nothing left to do. We've played every game, lying round. We ran out of all the colors, so it's not like we can go out and paint the town. I know you want to be my lover, it's all there in your eyes. And if tomorrow it all unravels, well, at least we'll have the sunrise. It's a hot summer night, the perfect time to indulge in some unoriginal sins. Okay, yeah. Some of these haven't been dark. I like this one just called Thursday. And because my shows drop on Thursday, let's give this a go. Again, haven't read these in ages, so I don't know where it's going to take us. Thursday. Yeah, it's just another day. The weekend shines like gold, but it's still so far away. All my wages spent on a case of beer and rent, waiting for a response for the love letter I just sent. Thursday. Did I mention it's my birthday? I called my family and friends, but I think they all ran away. I've got candles but no cake. I've got hamburg instead of steak. I've got no memories, just a photograph of you and me by a lake. Thursday. I think this is my first day of the rest of my life, or at least that's what people say. Maybe it's time to escape from the world I've come to hate. I'm tired of always being emotionally raped. And now that all my plans are laid, maybe I'll wait till next Thursday, the next time I get paid. Interesting. Oh, springtime. Since it's springtime, let's go for it. I know this one's dark. It's ironic dark, though. Children dance through fields of marigolds. They sing because springtime has finally arrived. They pick flowers that smell like perfume and run and play as a cool springtime breeze blows by. They find a pond and they wade in it for fun. But the chemicals that were dumped there take effect. The children run out of the pond screaming as their flesh begins to burn off their bones. As the children lie in the fields with disfigured limbs and third-degree burns, they think of springtime. I actually remember reading that at a very pompous poetry reading, and I don't know exactly how they took it, but I know nobody came out and talked to me after I finished reading it. Here's one called Dance Under Your Skin. You ask if we could meet out in the pouring rain. Something so young shouldn't have to endure so much pain. You say I'm your hero even when I'm dressed in black. You come to me knowing then I've been to hell and back. But for now you're safe in my arms. I hold your head and protect you from the storm. Stay close to me as the cold winds start to blow, and forever I can keep you warm. Let me into your heart, and just like a religion, I will save you from your sins. And let me into your soul, and just like an addiction, I will dance beneath your skin. I like that. How many times do I have that one down? Ooh, I like this title, always did. Don't know if I like the poem, but I like the title. I dream in velvet. I sling into the back of a taxi cab, searching for what used to be my life. Maybe it slipped down between these seats with the spare change and the scattered drugs. I just sold my body for a couple of bucks, lipstick still smeared across my face. It always looks so glamorous in the movies, but to me it's just a pain in the ass. I dream in velvet, and I very seldom laugh. I know this isn't Kansas, and I know I don't want to go back. I sometimes believe I'm immortal, but I know that it's the end of the line. I can feel my superstar fading, although they tell me I'm feeling fine. Love it! Yeah, I love it. Oh, here's a promise. It's called I Promise. So let's see what I promised. This is fun. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. For me, this is memory lane, but for you, it's just like, oh God, this is bad. Anyhow, I promise. Let's see. The young boy looked at me. He looked as if he wanted to reach out and hug me, but pride kept us apart. He told me to promise him that we'd grow old together. I was speechless. I didn't know what to say. How could I make a promise like that? Our fates are uncertain. I have never seen his eyes so desperate. They chilled me right through. My lips trembled as I spoke. I promise. I don't think this is dark, so I'm going to read this one just to show you that I'm not all about darkness, although the last one didn't seem very dark. Please don't let this feeling end. We hold each other in each other's arms and pray there is a tomorrow. You look at me with optimistic eyes, and I feel as if there just might be a heaven. I used to think that you held me only to make me feel good, but last night I could tell you needed the warmth too. I believe your love is closer to mine, thank you, than you ever imagined. And as you hold me tight to prove that love, I whisper, please don't let this feeling end. You look at me as if to say you agree with me and run your hand gently over my head. Then we both lay back onto our make-believe garden and question what the future holds for us. Ooh, losing my mind. Oh God, help me, I'm losing my mind. I'm not asleep, but still I dream. I can't shake this feeling of concrete hands touching me. A shadowed figure chases me from dream to nightmare. Soon I lay naked in a pool of blood. But I'm asleep. But I'm not asleep. But the dream continues. I think of a man who used to love me. He turned into a creature who has no heart. He laughs as I lay naked in a pool of fire. I finally fall asleep and there's... Yes, I actually left it with a ... I was deep, people. My private island. I could spend hours sitting on this beach looking over this lake. On this place I like to call my private island, where a cool breeze ruffles the feather that stakes my claim, and a memory of lost innocence chills my heart. That actually is a poem about a place I haven't been to in probably since the 80s. And it was a place that I was with the first guy I ever was in love with. Unrequited love, of course. And I remember putting a feather that we found and claiming it as our own. Anyhow, I hope you're enjoying this. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm going to read a couple more. This is called Self-Absorbed, because some of you might be thinking of that right now. You're the type who believes the sun rises for you, that each day bears your name. You're the type who believes the night belongs to you, that each star follows your shadow. You're so self-absorbed and believe the world revolves around you. But it's time to learn the truth. Set that notion free. You're so self-absorbed, but it's time you learn the truth. Everyone knows the world revolves around me. I like that one so much. In fact, I'm actually enjoying reading these. I think I might have to look at not only going through all these poems, but maybe it's time to give poetry a shot again, unless some of you write to me and say, "Don't quit your day job!" Has anybody ever really, made a living as a poet? Unless you're, really big. Plastic in my bed. Roll over. Your work is done for the night. I can't stand your breath on the back of my neck. You weren't the lover I was looking for, but we accomplished exactly what we set out to do. Your exercise. That's all you were to me. You've built your body up nice, but there's nothing in your head. I don't mean to be cruel, but you're just a toy to me. To be honest, you're just plastic in my bed. I wish I did write that for something, but I don't know. I cared for all the people I had sex with. That was my problem. Stigmata. I think I remember this one, so I'm going to read it. I was in desperate need of salvation. I found a church on the dark end of the street. As I stepped in from the rain, I suddenly felt all eyes fall upon me. The preacher had the nerve to speak of compassion. I could see him slowly turn up his nose. I tried to show them these cuts in my hand, but all they could see was the rips in my clothes. I was going through a real Jesus thing. I was going to actually do a segment about how I'm obsessed with... I have a Jesus complex. It comes up a lot. Fashionably depressed. I stir the stick in my 14th drink. I swallow the olive and watch others dance. I'm impeccably dressed and fashionably depressed as I vow to give up on romance. Simple and sweet. One Blue Rose. I'm going to read this one because when I was in my 20s, I saw an image of a blue rose, and I actually started collecting them for a bit, and they were my trademark for the longest time. One blue rose is what I've been searching for, so unique, one of a kind. One blue rose would symbolize the love we shared and then left behind. I remember the nights I held you close to me, and the dreams, the way love was supposed to be. Now all I search for is a rose as blue as my soul. I have no clue where this one's taking us, but I like the title. Let selfish be thy name. No more time for darkness. Place it all in a bottle and send it out to sea. I hope the tide takes it far away, so it does not turn and come back to devour me. No more time for tears unless they are made from love, understanding, and tenderness. I'm tired of drowning in my own despair. The time has come for a little happiness. And if they call me selfish, then let that be my name. For I'd rather dance in the sunlight than forever in these flames. We're going to end with one more. I don't know if it's a good one or a bad one. If it's a really bad one, I might find another one, but we'll see. This one's called An Old-Fashioned Love Poem. If I asked you nicely, will you give me everything you've got? And in return, I'll give you everything in my heart. But I'll admit, it's not a lot. And I know love is such an old-fashioned word, but I choose it to describe the feelings deep inside me. You make me feel so alive. And I won't be angry if you don't feel the same way. I know by the look in your eyes, you can't even remember my name. But don't be embarrassed, because everything's going to be all right. I'll just kiss your cheek, walk away, and catch you in another life. I actually like that one. I'm going to do one more, though, because I'm enjoying this way too much, and I'm probably going to be looking into these. But let me find one with a title that's like one. Okay, this is kind of a dark one, but I love this one. It's called All the Love in Your Heart. You hold me tight with the approach of the coming night. You whisper in my ear, there's nothing left to fear. I try hard because I so want to believe. I'm hearing those voices again, the ones claiming to be my friends. They've offered me the right to a most eternal life. I try hard to fight, but I can't, for I'm weak. Then you see me slowly slipping away, slipping into darkness without a sound, and as you begin to cry, I wipe the tears from your eyes and I say, all the love in your heart couldn't save me now. I'm starting to like these. I've forgotten that sometimes even in darkness, I don't know. I like it. This was based on a song that I used to love. I think it's a nice one to end it with. I know I keep saying I'm going to end it, but I promise this time. If you really like these, I'll do more, but if not, be gentle, remember. Is it okay if I call you mine? If I asked you to hold me in your arms, would you turn and run away? If I asked you to just hold my hand, would you laugh at me? Could you learn to love me even if it goes against everything you believe? And on a hot summer night, as I lay my hands gently on your shoulders, is it okay if I call you mine? All right, that's enough poetry. I went over, but I hope you enjoyed it. I can't believe I actually shared it. Some of it wasn't actually bad. I know some of it is repetitive, holding you tight, and swallowed in darkness, fire. I had a certain thing. I should try writing some more, though. Especially with me going through such moody states lately and feeling the world's crushing down on me. Maybe now's the time to redo this again and start seeing if I can do it again. It blows me away because this is a whole chapter of my life I forgot I did. And I shouldn't have, because some of that wasn't half bad. Some of it is still the way I feel. Some of it I haven't felt like that in years. It's interesting to revisit projects, especially if they inspire you. And I don't know, I'm not going to say yes or no, but I'm really thinking about some poems I'd like to write right now. Anyhow, why don't you dig through some of your closet and check out some of the things you've created, whether it's a painting or a poet or even a journal or a diary. It's sometimes good to revisit the past, especially if it can help your future. I've had a great time. Thank you for joining us. I hope you had a good time. Anyhow, I'll be back next week with the 2017 summer movie preview and take a look at all the movies that are going to be hitting theaters this summer. Thank you for joining me, and I'll talk to you very, very soon.